Hello, and welcome back to part two, where we're going to be kind of going over the data that we've set up. So just to kind of give an explanation really quickly before I go over to the data, I've got a couple of pieces here that I've already built and we'll kind of be walking through later on. That's why you see so many sheets. So we'll kind of go over through that and rename it. You can kind of think of this almost like, Rachel Ray or some other cooking TV show where, I'll show you kind of the end result. We'll kind of go over how to make it, and then we'll kind of put things together, or we'll kind of piece together the last few pieces as we go along. Okay, so we've got three data sets. They're just at different granularities, and that's why they all exist. And you can do a lot of calculations on the Tableau side. I personally tend not to like to, just because it's really, if you had too many calculations on Tableau, it can kind of end up like Excel, which for any of you who have built a massive Excel sheet, it becomes a monster to maintain, and most people might not even understand it. And so I prefer to kind of try to do as much logic in the SQL rather than in Tableau. Again, that's kind of personal preference. Everyone likes doing the logic in one place or another. The caveat being that I often see analysts, especially, build layered calculations where there's layers upon layers upon layers upon layers of calculations. So you might take this calculation, which this is a calculation you can tell because it's got those two little dashes there by ABC. Same thing like with int conversion percent and things like that. Those are all kind of calculations. And then you might take that calculation and then do a calculation based off that calculation and then do a calculation based off that one. And then you've got this long nested, huge list of dependencies that no one really understands except for you. And then someone in the future has to like trace out that list of dependencies. So that's why I prefer not doing too many calculations and doing a lot more on the SQL side, just because then you can see it all and hopefully understand it easier. Again, it's preference. I'm sure some people prefer doing it in Tableau. I'm sure Tableau would prefer you doing it in Tableau because it keeps you stuck on their product. Personally, I think from a big picture standpoint, I think it's better to do it outside and then bring in almost as purely calculated numbers as you can as you need it. Again, there's some times where that's not. There's are good reasons to calculate in Tableau. I just think you need to be careful for how much you rely on the calculations. All right, so let's look over these data sets. So the data conversion, it's kind of what it says like, or it sounds like. It's kind of actually a rolling conversion. So let's look at the date. So it's got the dates. Hold on. So in Tableau, you can kind of look at the date, look at day, and make it discrete versus continuous. So you'll see it starts somewhere in January and then ends somewhere all the way in April. And then we're going to put in the percent of daily conversions. Now, one thing you'll notice is, hold on, actually. One thing is, so percent of daily conversions, this is actually at the granularity of age group and store. So we need to filter for one specific store or you're going to get the wrong granularity. Let's just say store 47, I guess. But that's not all, because there's also different age groups, and you're going to get messed up percentages if you do the wrong age group. So now you can kind of look at the data, and now you've kind of got this percentage going, your daily percentage going on kind of conversion rate here. So if we were to give it a little line graph, here it is. Okay, so we've kind of got this line graph with conversion rate that seems to be increasing over time. Great, so there was none at the beginning, so maybe they didn't even have, maybe this store didn't even start doing the ad until the 19th of March, and we just have data for everyone else up until then, and then they really started converting people. And for some reason, again, there's some drop, maybe it was like a weekend. It's hard to tell. Again, this is the age group for 40 and 50 and store 47. And that's the granularity of this specific data set. So basically we have this age, and then we also have the specific store. So if I were to accidentally not filter it for this way, then we're going to get some wacky numbers. Okay, so that's this one, the daily conversion data set. So let's remove this. Hold on. Okay, so let's do cutoff. So what this specific data set is it's kind of showing the conversion rate for a specific store and age group. So again, let's look at 40 and 50. Look at store again, store 47, let's say. And then it's got a basically the current conversion rate as well as what we're calling the cutoff, which is just like the average conversion rate. We could probably better call this like the average conversion rate and compare this to the store's current conversion rate. So what this number basically means is, on average, for most 40 and 50-year-olds, without looking at store, like all the stores across this company's data set, the average is 0.2649. So it's 26%, right? Or 27% actually, really. No, 26%. So actually, let's say this is more like average conversion. That would be a better term for this. So this is like the average conversion rate, and this is the conversion rate for this specific store. So this is 18% and this is 26%. So what you can kind of base this off already is that the average conversion rate is much higher. So this store is actually doing much worse in regards to conversion in comparison to the in comparison to the average. So this is the 18%. So the average is doing about 10% better. And so that's what this data set is. It's just really comparing conversion rates. So you can kind of tell how good, how well your store is doing. All right, so now comparison conversion. So what I want to do, and we're going to do this in the next video, is kind of build a few ranking type scores. And we're going to use the pie chart, but we're going to make the pie chart into a donut chart. So we're going to eventually show you how to do that, which is kind of a workaround you do in Tableau. But we're gonna end up building that. But what we wanted to do is kind of rank how well stores are converting compared to other stores. So in the other one, it was just the average comparison to your current comparison, or to your current conversion. So the average conversion to your current conversion. But another interesting thing you might want to look at is just, okay, but how does that rank, regardless of average? Because average can be confusing, right? Maybe it's heavily leaning towards one side or the other. So instead, let's rank it. So let's try to figure out, okay, but like how well is this store doing compared to other stores? And that's the purpose of this data set. So basically, let's rank this conversion. We'll rank conversion for 7 days. Again, we want a specific store. In this case, it's not by age. This is just this is at the store granularity, 47. Let me just check something. Okay, yeah. Okay, so just to explain kind of something. So what I basically did with this data set is, in order to make this easy, and there are other ways you can do this, but I just did this in the query. Like I said, I like doing a lot of stuff in the query. So for aesthetic purposes, the rank is actually 80 in this case. But because you're going to make like a pie chart out of this, and then kind of I'll show you what we're going to do with this later, it's a lot easier if you just get the inverse value as well, rather than having to calculate it later. Because you could technically take this 80 minus 1, get the inverse, and do something to get the right pie chart. But I think this is just easier. Just already have this data preset, and this 0 data set is basically a null data set that's just meant to hold the inverse. So that way, when we make a pie, which we'll show this later to make it a donut, it automatically goes into this, this shape, because we kind of wanted to make it look like it's almost a full kind of, with the donut, like almost kind of a full meter. But so yeah, so this is for aesthetic purposes, less than data purposes, and you can kind of also switch this just by dragging this over. And you'll see when I put this all together that it'll look much nicer. And again, it's much easier to put together. This is just one of those things where it's like, I'm trying to save you guys time, but also like in learning these little tricks, because doing this personally makes more sense than trying to figure out, trying to do 3 different calculations in Tableau just to get this little finicky thing to work out correctly. So that's what this is basically going to show. And we'll put this all together in the next video. I just wanted to kind of go over lightly the different data sets we're going to use, so that way you kind of understand where things are going. If you have any questions, please post them below. Again, so in the next video, we're going to start kind of putting together different pieces of this chart. That was just kind of an overview of the data. So thank you for watching, and come back shortly.